All right. One of the things that I'm a big fan of is doing CI builds or continuous integration builds. And I've been working with CircleCI quite a bit lately. And as a little bonus, I'm going to show you exactly how to set that up in the project. Now, I've opened up the project inside of IntelliJ. And to use the CircleCI 2.0 configuration, you create a hidden directory called .circleci and put it in a file called config.yml. And this is all the build information for CircleCI, and this is how CircleCI is going to build our project. And what CircleCI is going to do in the cloud is going to create a Docker container, and then using that Docker container is going to run our build inside of that Docker container. It's actually a really, really cool technology. Now, the one thing I've done for this is you do have the option to override their default Docker containers. And I've used the CircleCI containers in the past, and they're pretty good. But now we're on a JHipster project, and we need to have like Node.js and Yarn installed and stuff like that. And you can do that in the run steps to set that up, but it's actually a little more efficient for your builds to do that inside of the containers. So I've gone over here, and this is a Docker file. And you can see that I'm going from the CircleCI OpenJDK 8, so that gives me Java installed. And now you can see here I'm running a series of commands under the run commands, and this is my Docker file that I'm using to build that image. And I also wanted AWS in this because I have other projects using this that are deploying to AWS, which is not in the scope of this course. But here I'm also installing, you can see down towards the bottom there, I'm installing the stuff for Yarn and Node.js. So all these last few lines here are installing that. And annoyingly, this CircleCI image didn't have the VI editor. So if I ever need to shell into that Docker container to do something, and now I have a very useful tool of VI. And now this image is stored up on Docker Hub. I'll show you that. If you go to my account on Docker Hub Spring Framework Guru, the CircleCI build image is up there. And we reference that. You can see Spring Framework Guru / CircleCI _ build. And if I come back over here, you can see that I'm specifying that image. And again, that image just extends out the CircleCI JDK image, and I've added in the stuff for JHipster. Now, you can see that it goes through, we do a checkout, we restore cache, we do a boot clean test, and probably could skip this repackage step here, because what I'm going to do is save the test results. And if I'm happy with the test, if the test pass, you can see down here in line 59, I'm going to build the Docker image. So I'm going to do a boot repackage to prod and build the Docker image. So every time I check in, I'll have a Docker image ready for my use. And I'm not deploying it anywhere just yet, but I'll add that to a future step inside of the build. And for right now, what I want to show you is I'm going to go ahead and check this in. So add in that build config right into GitHub, and we'll push that up. And that is now almost, yep, there we are. We're now up to GitHub. Now I'm going to come back over here in CircleCI, and you can see that I have the organization Angular for Java developers. That's where we're going to be working at. And I don't have any projects in it. So I'm going to say, let's add a project. You can see the RFB loyalty. And CircleCI is really nice. So you can see I've got a few differences. This is the generic build file that CircleCI provides. So you can see I changed mine some, because I've been using CircleCI, so I have my own little Gradle build script for CircleCI that includes building the Docker image, and also is not using this base image. Remember how I talked about that? Now I've overridden mine to use this Docker image. So let's go ahead and we will just say start building. And while that is running, let's go ahead and see our projects. And I'm going to go into the settings of this. I'm going to show you one other thing while it is running. And you can see the status badges. Copy that. And I'm going to come back over here, take our README file. And now you can see here, I've got a little preview that says no builds. And I am going to go ahead and commit that. And we'll go ahead and commit and push that. And again, this is the base vanilla JHipster project. I haven't done any changes. I'm setting up the CircleCI build right away on it. Let's take a look at that build now, see how he's doing. And you can see, let's see here. So it's pulling down the world. Oh, okay, so it's pulling down that Docker image. So we can see that's going. And I'm going to pause this for a moment, and we'll take a look at the completed build. All right, I had to pause the video here for a couple minutes. Actually, it was a little bit longer than just a couple minutes because I had some debugging to do here. What happened, I had two errors. I'll show you exactly what happened here. Let me toggle over to IntelliJ. The first problem was I had a problem in my setup for Yarn. Had to reinstall Yarn. I have a permissions issues there. So this is kind of a temporary patch. I was mistaken my image, and I'll probably go in and correct this at some point in the future, so we don't need this step here. The next problem was I had set up remote Docker lower down here where I thought it was needed, and just before starting this video I did upgrade to the latest version of JHipster, and they changed a few versions ago that they were not using this Docker build plugin. Now they are, and it was running into a problem where I couldn't find the Docker daemon. And what's happening in CircleCI is they're using a remote Docker, and it gets set up with every build. So I had to do a little Googling and searching, and now I added in this section here that I'm highlighting 15 to 18. Those are some environment variables that are going to be provided at runtime. Now remember, CircleCI is a cloud type environment. It's running in a Docker container. Every time I do a build, it's going to provision a container to run my build in on some host. And I'm going to get some instance of a Docker daemon injected in, and these are set up as an environment variables, and the certificate is set up as an environment variable. So now these commands here make my build portable on CircleCI. So that's setting up all the Docker stuff. And now our build is completing normally. If I come over here, we can see I did have a number of builds that I went through, and this is still quote unquote running because I actually show you this. I can actually SSH in and toggle over to command line. It's just a quick educational type opportunity that we are taking advantage of. I clear this. And now I'm on the command line, and if you're using Windows, you'd be able to use something like PuTTY, since Windows, as far as I know, unless they've added it recently to Windows 10, I could be wrong there. SSH is not native to Windows, but it is on OS X. And if I do an env, and this is all the environment variables, and I clear that and do a env. Now these are the Docker environment properties that are getting set for us. So you can see that it's setting up a certificate path for us, and that's going to be random to us at least. That's going to set up as runtime, and this Docker host as well. That's going to provide us a Docker daemon to work with, and that is going to be set as runtime as well. So ran into a couple problems here. You got to see a little bit of extra stuff, but now the builds are going, and found with CircleCI you can do a rebuild with SSH, and then it's going to keep this open for 2 hours. I just go in, cancel the build, and now I can go in and say we'll just do a quick rebuild, and that we can refresh this. You can see that I have a build status there. In a few minutes, when this build completes, that will go green, and you can watch this repository, and if you ever see that flipping to red, be sure to give Dan and I a hard time, because that should always be green, because we are actually watching our CI builds, right? So we are trying to show you best practices here. Hope you enjoyed this little setup with CircleCI. I'm a big fan of CircleCI. It is absolutely free to use until you get into bigger build commitments, but you guys can go out. I highly encourage using CircleCI because it is a great build tool.